I'd like to welcome author of Dyslexia Code, Why Right-Brained Children Should Be Left Alone, the Health Spring Code, What the Longevity Nations Know About Living Disease-Free and We Don't, and the Universe Code, Unlocking the Hidden Truth About God, Free Will, and Power of Salvation. I'd like to welcome Karl de Leeuw to the show. How you doing, Karl?
Fine, and yourself, Dylan? Hello there, yeah, from Dublin in Ireland.
That's awesome, man. And I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's pretty late over there right now. Your books, uh, I know you'd sent me a copy today. I didn't get a chance to look at it. Unfortunately, I will read over it, but just the titles alone suggest a lot of interesting stuff, man. It kind of gets my gears going, gets me fired up. It's right up the alley of stuff that I'm into. Can we maybe touch a little bit on each one of your books real quick before we get into what we, decided that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, let's shoot. So this Dyslexia Code, my daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia back in 2009, and she was taken out of class. And the upshot of it is that dyslexia is a huge gift. What I discovered is Sally Sayworth in the States, in New York, Yale University, they have shown that a dyslexic person mainly use the right side of the brain. And in my book, I give all the details, the fMRI studies of that. And a non-dyslexic person used the left side of the brain. And then I list all the famous dyslexics, from Einstein to John F. Kennedy to many, many more. And what I'm saying is, in the last 20 years since, I was never diagnosed when I was at school, but in the last 20 years, kids are now being diagnosed, depending in different countries. And they're now making kids use the left side of the brain, using traditional products. And I found a method, the Davis's method, that uses clay shapes to assist the child. And it's all about preserving the gift and knowing that a dyslexic person thinks differently. So it's not all about A's in an exam paper. And once parents understand that their child uses a different part of the brain and has a different gift, the negative, it's yin and yang, the negative in the educational system, like Einstein, he never excelled. But we've got lots of Einsteins. But what's happening is the dyslexia associations are taking away the gift of dyslexia. So obviously, I normally discuss this in half an hour, 45 minutes. So, but it's a huge gift. And then the Health Spring Code came out of my Dyslexia Code book. The Dyslexia Code I researched for about 6 months, and then the Health Spring Code for another 6 months, because in dyslexic studies, they take kids off lactose in milk and glutens in wheat and other stuff, and then they improve through functional tests. So after I researched Dyslexia Code, I knew I had to research nutrition, and I knew nothing about nutrition, and that was fantastic because I could start with a clean slate. So I researched the longevity nations that live today, and particularly the Hunza Ghats in northern Pakistan that live disease-free. And basically, the upshot is they didn't eat meat, dairy, and eggs, and pesticides. And, I come from South Africa. One of my two best friends is a butcher in South Africa, so I know all about, I grew up with meat, dairy, and eggs, and pesticides. But, so the book is all about going vegan, which is vegan and fish, plus 70% organic. The vegan industry get it wrong. When I went vegan 10 years ago, my mineral and vitamins levels fell. I tested through saliva, blood, and urine tests. And the way I got it up is through seafood and sea salt. Table salt is a slow poison. So it's 21 chapters explaining everything.
So you're saying seafood's a good meat to eat then, as far as what we need for nutrition?
Yes. So meat, dairy, egg is slightly alkaline before it enters the body, but it's acidic forming in the body. It's called a Prowl score, where a fruit that's say a lemon that's 3 to 4 pH, or broccoli that's 8 pH, above 7 pH, that's alkaline. Both of them are alkaline forming in the body. It's called a Prowl score. So all meat, dairy, and eggs are acidic forming, all fruit and veg are alkaline forming. And that's the issue. The meat, dairy, and eggs makes the body acidic, and then our blood needs to run at 7.365 pH. If it goes up or down by 0.5 pH, we die. Three things regulate that: the blood, the circulatory system, the lungs, and the liver. So for someone like that's got osteoporosis, purely for their genes, because they're taking acidic diet, eating an egg, acidic forming, the blood needs to stay at 7.365 pH. So it goes for calcium in the bones, pulls the calcium, and different diseases, different things. So I've got a study that actually started today. I reversed my asthma in 9 months flat. So yes, vegan and fish, and I go 70% organic. You know, pesticides, everything that's non-organic has got pesticides in, and the pesticides gets trapped in your body. So most people are walking around just big pesticides, tanks of pesticides, water tanks of pesticides. So obviously, you know, like normally I discuss this for 45 minutes or whatever, so I can carry on and give a lot more information on that. So that's that one. And then my third book.
That's interesting though. You know, we have a population in the United States over here that's you know, we call them the Amish, they live like, you know, people that lived in the 1500s, and that population that I talk about almost has zero cancer. They have, you know, zero, they don't take vaccinations. They, you know, they eat organic, they eat, you know, homegrown food, and they stay within, you know, they eat like, you know, within their community. And it's just interesting because you know, I've had so many interviews, and every time, you know, that we get into this holistic thing, it always comes down to diet, right? And what we're putting into our bodies is really what's making the population sick.
Oh, absolutely. Our kids don't need to be hospitals. Apart from accidents, kids don't need to be hospitals, but people are just like junk food. So they say, well, you know, I don't mind dying of it. That's why most people die 67, 80. And half the population is in old age homes, dying like from Alzheimer's and cancer, as you mentioned, all kind of things. The longevity nations, particularly the Hunza Cuts in northern Pakistan, four books were written about them. And one was a US doctor that lived for 7 years. And I've got a video, they're playing volleyball in their 90s. When they old, they the real old, the wise, not like our old. And that population you mentioned, that's one of the 7 nations that I researched. And then the 8th, the super longevity nations, they're no longer longevity nations, the Hunza Cuts in North Pakistan, because they built a highway to them, super highway. Now they've got all kinds of diseases. So yeah, fascinating. It's all 100% preventable. So, you know, if anyone is interested in more information, all my 3 books are, I've got separate websites, but people just need to go to lightsurfers.me, L-I-G-H-T, lightsurfers, surfers.me. And all that information is on there. And my book is on discount at the moment at 99 cents.
Excellent.
So,
I'm going to check you out for sure. I know, like, you know, I'm diabetic, and I've controlled a lot of my issues through diet, you know, changing my diet and eating organic and eating a lot more vegetables. But, you know, my goal is to actually reverse it, not just, you know, live with the symptoms and try to control my sugars, but to actually reverse it and to, you know, no longer have to take medication and stuff like that. So that's it. That's interesting. I'm definitely going to check that out. And then your third book, The Universe Code. Can we talk about that?
You know, that book took me 7 years of research. And that's by far the most important. You know, I don't, there's so many things to discuss in the book but I can mention one thing, and that is the difference between the creator and God. So in my research, I had about about 500,000 words after 7 years of research, going to events, flying all over the world, blah, blah, blah. And then I condensed it down to the book, which is, I think, 154 pages. And I took out 2/3 of the things that make sense. And 2/3 of the things that made sense is information from the spirit world, from entities that communicate with people currently. And so Angel Margaret, that communicated with a guy in the state called Jerry Gavin, says that, and I've heard this from others in the spirit world that use different analogies, that the creator is, this analogy is very close to what it is. We are the computers, the angels are the servers, and the creator is the mainframe computer. So us humans, and actually souls, plus the angels, together is the creator. And that is, and I believe that we can have world peace in our lifetime, but it's got to come through the truth. The truth will set us free. And if you believe in evolution as I do, there can only be one creator. So the 5 main religions that I've researched, which is 5 of my 21 chapters, that make up 80% of humanity, there's mistakes in it. And it's mainly in the Old Testament, New Testament, and in certain things that's not yet discovered in the Quran. And if you believe in Allah, which is the creator, there can only be one creator. You know, one person, a Hindu, cannot be a different creator to a Muslim, for instance, or the other religions. So that is the creator. Then what is God? So theologians, Christian theologians, there's something, I've got a statistic in my book, they are something like 90% theologians, is the God of the Old Testament the same as the Allah, so the creator of the Quran? And they say, no, it's not. And they're right, it's not. This is from what I found from my research. So
that's odd. That does seem to be a mistake then, right?
No, it's not a mistake. It's correct, because the gods turn out to be the Pleiadians. I never know how to pronounce the Pleiadians. You know,
the Pleiadians.
That's them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we are their seed. They are seed parents. So are they 1 million years more advanced than us? And they came to, in my book, I've got a chapter, I give all the history, but a quick summary of the history of it. But the upshot is that they stopped coming to Earth 8,000 years before Christ. And the reason why they did it is because every time they came to Earth, locals saw them as gods, because they 1 million years more advanced than us spiritually, physically. Well, they're just slightly bigger than us, but they live about 2,000 years now. And also scientifically, they're way advanced from us. So but they do still provide us hope. That's why you've got sightings of UFOs every now and then by the Pentagon. You know, Ronald Reagan has seen a UFO. Air Force One followed it for about 2 weeks, 2 minutes, and then it went beam away. It's 30 times in the Old and New Testament. It's in Chinese talk about the dragon of fire. You know, it's in all different cultures. And so they stopped coming because we need to earn our own way. Earning our way is one of the secrets of the universe as well. And but they come, that's why we've got the crop circles. They create the crop circles. And they're in charge of the Pleiadians and Earth, and they still are. And that's why the US government keep everything hush, because they don't want to say we're not in charge. The Pleiadians are in charge. So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the person, because they per people as well, but the person in charge of the Pleiadians was Ipswich. And he's the God of the Old Testament, 16,000 years before Christ. And then, but they live and die. And then 9,000 years before Christ, it was Jehovah. That's where Jehovah comes from. And currently the God of the Pleiadians is El. So you get El in the Old Testament as well. So that's the history of it. And then I know we're going to start discussing the moon shortly, but just to finish it off, the true sighting, this is what the spirit world says and what the Talmud of Jamaniel says. So the Talmud of Jamaniel was found in 1963 by Billy Meyer. Billy Meyer is currently 82 years old. He lives in Switzerland. And he can communicate with the Pleiadians. So the Pleiadians told him that the Talmud of Jamaniel is in the grave of Jesus, where Jesus was for 3 days. It's not the grave they thought, it was a different place. And he found it, and then a Arabic guy started translating it in German, and then Israelis found out about it and they killed him. So it's all there, it's all on, all out there, the Talmud of Jamaniel. And and Billy Meyer is the only true contactee. So he's got footage. If you go to figu.org, figu.org, or Billy Meyer, BILLYMEIER, he's got all the footage in the 70s, photos plus video footage of the Pleiadians. And a lot of the stories about UFOs that's put out there is actually put out by governments, mainly the US government, just to confuse. And that's the reason behind it. But things are changing, and that's why we need to bring out the truth. And yeah, so that's the difference. So the creator is Allah, which is basically us. And it's not us in our human form. So we are all made up of strings, string theory. Just so interesting, the string theory, which is if a string is the size of a tree, the solar system is the size of an atom. So we just made up of vibrating strings. Anyone can Google it. String theory is the God particle they found in CERN. You know, the collider in CERN, they found the God particle. It should be called the greater particle. So everyone is just made up of strings. The whole universe, the air around us. So somehow us as computers, the angels as servers, together is the mainframe computer. So you get the big bang, and then you get fluffy matter, which is actual spiritual energy. And then that spiritual energy moves into mineral energy, later minerals, and then into plant, and then into animals. That's how it works. But yes, so if I start discussing that, I can discuss forever.
And
so
you're like a wealth of knowledge, man. I'm gonna have to have you back on the show because there's way too much here to discuss in one episode. But it's fascinating. What's your background? How did you come up with this information in your research, or maybe what made you want to do this? I kind of want to get a kind of a gist for the listeners, that like who are you as a person, and why do these topics interest you so much?
Okay, so I grew up in South Africa, Pretoria, South Africa, which is the heart of apartheid. So I grew up in a very staunch church and stuff like that. And then I moved to London at age 25, and I'm accountant in the building industry. So they call us a chartered quantity surveyors. It's a profession in the Commonwealth countries. And so we look after the accounts and building industry, but it's also legal issues and stuff like that. And then from then, I went into property, and I moved my 3 kids from London, my wife to my ex now, to Dublin, where I'm now. And I made a lot of money. And then through one property in Dublin in 2007, so in August 2007, we had the worldwide subprime crisis, caused by the American subprime mortgages. And I was caught up in that. And property prices fell between 15, 80% in Ireland. Ireland, the Celtic Tiger is, things were crazy. And the banks were just lending money left, right, and center. So my property that wasn't fully completed, because I was developing it, the banks pulled a plug. And then 3 years later, my property was 80% lower value. So suddenly I owed the banks €2 million, and I couldn't invest anymore. And all my other properties, just like a domino effect. And then my daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia, and I woke up. So I had this hunger to start. I couldn't invest, and I started researching. And then when I research and stuff, I just go crazy. And that's one of the reasons why I'm divorced now. And I just go for it. And I get the truth. And I spent a lot of time at the London College of Psychic Studies as well. So I can communicate now with the spirit world as well. But most people, I actually do it through automatic writing. Most people speak to, well, no, that's too long a story. But in any case, I actually communicate with, when we chat again, we can discuss it. I communicate via automatic writing with the creator.
That's fascinating. Okay, on to the topic. The moon, Apollo 11, 1969. What are your thoughts? What kind of evidence do you have for me?
Okay, so as I mentioned, for my Universe Code book, I researched for 7 years. I only researched for a day and a half on the moon. So I'm no expert. But it's interesting. I was interviewed recently about this, and the person said that there's a statistic in America that now 20% of people believe that the moon landings never took place, which I was quite surprised with. I thought it would be lower than that. So let me, I'm just going to, there's about 20 different things on the moon that film experts, film buffs, movie buffs, says that footage provided by NASA cannot be the case. It cannot, they couldn't have gone to the moon, and that's the issue. But then on the other side, you get other films experts that says, no, it is the truth. So I believe the only way it will, there's only 2 ways it can be resolved. One, you take NASA to court. You have 2 experts on, the prosecuting and defense, and you have a jury there, and they decide, because that's the only way you do it. But there's now a better way. Because NASA wants to go back to the moon in 2024, because apparently helium-3 could be a fuel to take us to Mars. Also, the Chinese, as you know, are now going separate. They've got they on the space race separately, and they want to go back to the moon. So this is exciting stuff, because I believe the moon landings never took place. It's just my gut feeling. There's something really fishy going on.
Do you believe we've ever been to the moon?
No, I believe probes have been to the moon.
Here's my issue with the moon landing. This right here that I have in my hand is 1,000 times more powerful than the technology they had in 1969 to send a spacecraft to the moon. That's my issue. I kind of wonder, like, how the hell did they get to the moon in 1969? How did they have the technology to do that? To not only to get to the moon, but to get to the moon and then to bring people back safely.
Yeah, so it's like 90% of, if Henry Ford made the car, if anyone now knew electric cars, the companies, 90% of their initial investment is in the first model, make that first model. So it's like Henry Ford back in the day making the first Model T, and just once these perfected it, so just as NASA has gone to the moon, they just stopped going to the moon. So,
yeah, that's an interesting, yeah.
So it's coming. Same kind of thing that you're saying is there's a video of a young girl, like 5, 6 years old, asking Neil Armstrong, why haven't you gone back for 50 years? And he just sits there, doesn't know what to say. So, you've got that, what you just said about the power of your mobile phone. You've got this, why we haven't got back in 50 years. But then you've got film experts, and we'll just discuss 5 photos of, and this is, as I mentioned, of 20 things, and where the experts believing the moon landing didn't take place says that footage by NASA, and they always ask NASA, and NASA can never gain a straight answer, cannot be true. So should we discuss those 5 photos just very briefly? Okay, so if anyone puts in "see on rocks moon landing," go to any browser you want to, "see on rocks moon landing," you will see there's, so the guys, film experts that believe the moon landing in place, they say it's as if, so first thing what they say is, this was shot in a big warehouse somewhere in America. And it's as if the film crew left clues. So there's a rock with a C on it. It's blown up. If you go "see on rocks moon landing" and you click images, you'll see it. It's blown up. There's a big C. And the film expert says that is NASA's footage. What the film experts on behalf of NASA says, it's a hair that's on the camera. And the film experts for the moon landing says it's not a hair. So that's, that's one. Number 2, so please just stop me on any of these at any point. So number 2 is shadows parallel moon landing. So if anyone puts in shadows parallel moon landing. So a lot of the shadows, so first of all, what I can understand, if you've got a wide angle lens, that shadows taken from the body, if you take a photo from the body as they purportedly did on the moon, that the shadows could go at angles out because it's wide lens. But any shadow that comes from left to right, or can one say parallel to you, those shadows, if someone stands on the same height and close to each other, within 10, 20 meters or 10 meters from another, the shadows have to be parallel. And the reason is because the sun comes from one direction only. It comes from millions of miles away. And the shadows, if they're the same height and close to each other, they've got to be parallel to each other. So now what the people that says the moon landing display say is that they always say, well, if I show a photo, they say, oh, well, they're not close to each other, they're on different heights. And I show photos where they're definitely next to each other. So in any case, the film experts are far more buffed up on that. So that's another one. Then if you look at the footage, if you put in horizon moon landing and click images, then you'll see the moon is, the horizon is just there. You can literally see the horizon. It's interesting now, the footage that they've now got of the on Mars of the probe shows the horizon, and then you can see, shows the immediate Mars Earth, and then you can see the horizon in the distance. So what the moon people say is that the probe on Mars was in a crater. That's why you can see it so closely and the rest. And and they say that moon is far smaller. And also what they say is the moon is in a vacuum, which it is. The moon is in a vacuum where Mars, like Earth, has an atmosphere. So they say the rules are slightly different. And therefore, because the moon is in a vacuum, and because the moon is smaller, you can see the horizon. But I just don't buy that. The big problem on the moon is that I think it's Pink Floyd, or is it one of these bands have got a thing, The Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, so I understand that the moon, we always see the light side. Okay,
Yeah, there's no rotation.
There's no rotation. So when the sun is, and it's a 27-day rotation, so 13 and a half days, and then after 13 and a half days, when the sun strikes the moon right in the center, the heat on the moon is 127 degrees. So for people in Fahrenheit, it's 27 degrees above boiling water temperature. So the moon landing, if it ever took place, had to take place either at sunset, if you can call it like that, or dusk. So they had to arrive at the beginning of that first 13 and a half day cycle. So that's another complication, how did they do that? So the last one is, I've got another one here, no sun moon landing. So what the people said that the moon landing took place is that the reason why there's no stars on the pictures on the moon, you just see black, is because the aperture or the shutter speed was very, I suppose, slow or fast, so that it couldn't pick up the stars. But my feeling is, just like Mars, the background should be the sun. Because if they have to arrive when at dawn and dusk, if you put it that way, the 13 and a half days. So the background has to be sun, surely, because these shadows are shining. So that to create that shadows, you have to have the sun. In any case, and then the last one is the shadows length. So this time, not the shadows in being parallel to each other, but if anyone put in shadow length moon landing, click image, you'll see there's a lot of photos where they're standing next to each other and the shadow length is not different. And you'll see a photo where they've superimposed a lamp. So they show that the one astronaut had a lamp coming from one direction, and then the other astronaut had to have a lamp from a different angle coming down.
That's interesting.
To make those, yeah. So if anyone had to Google those was said, but the interesting, why is this important?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's definitely a lot of things that don't add up about it. I'm not saying that we didn't land on the moon. I don't know, but there's definitely some things that make you question. But also there's some strange things about the moon itself that I kind of want to get into maybe after this. But the thing is what's your theory then? Why all this hoopla and to try to fake a moon landing, other than I understand in 1969 there was a space race and they were trying to beat the Russians and all that. But aside from that, like, why lie to the public and have this big hoax if it is a hoax?
Yeah, if it is a hoax, which we're going to find out soon, in the next 3 to 4 years, hopefully, which I believe it is, then the reason for it is Kennedy in 61 said we're going to the moon. So they had the space race with Russia, with the Soviet Union at that stage, and they had to do it. So I was in the building industry for 30 years. And I've actually got a talk on sophisticated fraud in the UK construction industry, which is on that website I gave you. And I've seen backhanders, and I've tried to stamp it out, because a quantity surveyor, accounting in the building industry, my whole reason for being there is to stamp out corruption. And this is nowadays, we're talking 2021. Just imagine in 1961, the backhanders, when billions and billions were spent on the moon. So NASA would have, a lot of their contracts were private contracts and stuff like that. So the backhanders would have been absolutely enormous. Then behind it all, when the US, Americans and the Soviet Unions, after the World War, they found the German scientists. They split them up. They call it the paperclip something.
Yeah, Operation Paperclip. And you're talking about von Braun, the Nazi scientist that came over.
That's
it was one of them.
So
he's one of the ones that headed up NASA, right?
That is exactly right. You got it there. So he was one of the paperclip. They split them up 50-50. Now, von Braun was a Nazi. There's, I've got the video footage. Once again, if people go to lightsurface.me and then they click on my third chat on the moon landing, I play a video at the end of American authorities confirming that von Braun was a Nazi. He was SS. And he was in charge of is it the V1 or V8 rocket, whatever it's called?
Yeah.
In Germany. And he was responsible for 20,000 Jews being killed. Every day, they hanged 5 or 6 Jews in front of this. It was in a underground, in front of this tunnel, to make people scared, to say to them, if you don't listen, this is what's going to happen to you. So now, this is my conspiracy theory. I don't call the moon hoax or the moon landing, I don't call that a conspiracy. That is purely a fact-checking exercise. So it's the film footage doesn't make sense. It's fact-checking. It's not a conspiracy whatsoever. Now, what I'm going to say now is a conspiracy theory. And I've got to put my hands up to that. So should it turn out that the moon landings never took place, and we're going to find out in our lifetime, then my conspiracy theory is the following. Von Braun was one of the guys in charge. It's, I think, quite realistic to think that he would have been one person receiving brown envelopes in contracts. And if someone was responsible for killing 20,000 Jews, I can see him perhaps pulling a trigger, giving the instruction to get John F. Kennedy assassinated. So
and you think it ties in with the moon landing, potentially, the assassination of Kennedy?
Yes, because when detectives always look at timelines. So in September 1963, Kennedy had a talk at the UN General Assembly, and he announced that the US want to do a joint trip to the moon with Russia. So imagine now you are von Braun, you are getting all these brown envelopes. This is conspiracy theory, I know. And you already know you can't make it to the moon. Oh yeah, there's one massive thing we need to mention first of all, and that's the Von Allen belt. So there's this radiation belt around the Earth, And NASA is now trying to figure out how to go through it. They literally got videos of NASA. I played this video in one of my talks where NASA is trying to figure out how to go through the Van Allen belt to get humans to Mars. And then the
Yeah,
guy,
they literally lost how to get to the moon, didn't they? Supposedly,
well,
right? Because they can get to the they could get to the moon, and now they're trying to figure out how to, like, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. So what the moon landing people say is NASA just hit, there's thinner parts of this belt. They just hit it at the right angle, they just got it, they were lucky. And they say the radiation is not sufficient. Where on the other side, we say apparently the spacecraft was something like 2 millimeter aluminium. They worked out to go through from our belt, it had to be about 10 millimeters. So you got two stories. But so imagine you from Brown, and this is now just a scenario. Let's assume they've worked out, well, we can't go through this Van Allen belt, which is very possible because, how do you go through you didn't have mobile phone capacity, as you mentioned before. And then Kennedy asked for you to meet up. After he announced that they're going to join Russia, he arranges to meet up. So in this footage I played, Bonnie, which is from Brown's secretary, confirms the day after John F. Kennedy's funeral, Von Braun was supposed to meet up with him. They had a meeting booked in their diary. So
Wow.
all I'm saying is, yes, if you go to the third interview, the last interview on lightsurface.me under moon landings, you've because it's on YouTube, it's really worthwhile checking. And it's got to be thrown into the ring. There can be other reasons, political reasons, because all the Martin Luther King and the Kennedys being very open to non-racist activities and stuff like that. And there could be other reasons or whatever, but it's certainly one that could be thrown into the ring.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, one of the things that terrifies me is that, both Russia and the United States really benefited greatly from breaking up Nazi Germany and getting a lot of the scientists. And I don't know, it's just a scary thought. I mean, is when it comes to, I love the country that I'm from, but when it comes to the things that they do and the things that they tell us, I don't trust anything. Because I mean, it goes, from 9/11 to the current state that we've just went through with, I don't want to go there, but I think you know what I'm talking about. The current times that we're currently living in, I don't really trust a lot of the information that I'm getting from them. But one of the things that interests me about the moon is, so whether they went to the moon or not, there's some strange things going on with the moon, right? Supposedly, the theory is that, part of the moon was torn away in a collision, which was created, from Earth. But supposedly, I guess, from what NASA says, some of the moon dust that's been tested from the probes that we've sent up is actually older than the Earth. So that's strange.
Yeah. So
another thing is that the probes, when they've hit the moon, they've claimed that there's more of a hollow aspect to the moon, and that there's not a core in the moon, that it's a hollow shell. And another interesting thing is that it's a quarter the size of the Earth, which that's not typical for something like a moon. That's not typical for a moon. And another interesting thing is the size based on the diameter of the sun, and how we get these perfect eclipses, almost as if the moon was placed in our orbit exactly at the right point. It's just interesting. And there's even ancient civilizations that talk about a time when there was no moon. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, so I would like to give our thoughts. I'd just like to mention one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so when you first started talking, you mentioned about other things and that you're a US citizen. And this is why, so and just before I say this, I don't believe COVID is a conspiracy. I believe COVID is real. You know, whether the Chinese somehow try to manufacture it, or whether it's through animal. I think it came from animals.
I believe it's a real virus too. I don't necessarily say it's a conspiracy. I'm just saying what I'm being told, especially when it comes to, how can I word this so that I don't get another strike against me? The medical side of things, I'm not too fond of, or I'm not so sure the numbers aren't skewed either.
Yeah, I personally don't think it is. I've got a chapter in my Hospital Code book on vaccinations. And I say, if you're on a meat, dairy, and egg and pesticide diet, you have to take, in my view, you have to take vaccinations. I haven't been vaccinated because I'm on a vegan diet. If your body is not toxic, you cannot get any disease. So you cannot get any. So my chapter 1 of the Hospital Code, just briefly, you've got Pasteur and you've got a guy called Antoine de Camp, late 19th century, two French scientists. Pasteur said it's the germ theory, and he won the way. He was a very well-spoken, very rich guy, and that's why we got drugs. And thank God we got drugs. On the other side, you had Become. You know, if I'm an accident, I want drugs. If you had Become, now Become said it's the terrain. If your body is non-toxic, germs cannot take hold. So I know coronavirus cannot take hold in my body. And on Pasteur's son found notes after his death that Pasteur said, Become got it right. It's the terrain. So this is why, if you eat the right food and stuff, and this is my book, The Hospital Code, if you make your terrain non-toxic, you don't need anything. But currently, 99% of the UK and US definitely need to. Also, I don't believe in I've never investigated the flat Earth. So flat Earth, I believe the Earth is round.
I do too.
Yeah, I don't believe that Twin Towers was a conspiracy by the US government or anything like that. But I do think there's something really fishy with the moon landings. Okay, but coming back to your first point you made, US, why is this moon landing thing so important? And the reason is, okay, reincarnation was taken out of the Old and New Testament. And if Muslims look for it, it's in the Quran. And reincarnation is all about Hinduism and Buddhism. So if you believe in reincarnation, as I do, and I'm a Christian, then
it's the real deal.
Yeah, it is the real deal. And when we come back together again, we'll discuss all of that. But then you believe in karma, and countries have got karma as well. So reincarnation is a cycle. You come to Earth with a mission, and then you've got to accomplish that. And if you don't accomplish it, or you're doing the opposite to what you've been doing, you're doing bad stuff, then you've got to come back again. And countries have got karma. And I believe that NASA, on behalf of the US, faked the moon landing. Now, the truth will set you free is the most important thing I've found in my whole research for 7 years for my Universe Code book. The truth will set you free. You cannot, the US, NASA, cannot wait until they found out that the moon landing didn't take place. The time is now. Saying US, NASA, put your hands up now and say, listen, 50 years ago, not us, because the current NASA employees is not the NASA 50 years ago, it couldn't have taken place because they know it. Just like the drug companies know about pH, about how alkalinity, and they know fully well how it works. So that's why it's important. The karma is really I believe the US should be the leader of the free world. And how can the leader of the US be the leader of the free world if they've pulled off the biggest lie ever that's been pulled off, in my view? But we'll find out in 24 or so. Now, on your point on the moon, on it, the composition being different and stuff like that, I've got a chapter in my Universe Code book, which for anyone, it's on Amazon, the Universe Code, or if you go to lightsurface.me, it's 99 cents, under $1 currently, but I'll never sell it for more than $3. And there's a chapter on Atlantis, and it's all explained there, how it all works. So Atlantis is, again, because there's so many untruths out there, is made up as this mystical people that swim underwater or anything like that. Atlantis is in between Europe and North America, in the Atlantic, under the water. But there used to be mountains there. So what happened is the Atlanteans, so Atlanta was destroyed. I've got the exact date in my book, like 11,000 years before Christ. It's actually the 6th of June. And I know it is because that's my birth date. There's a particular year, 11,000 and something before Christ. And the creator and the gods, so the Pedaean gods, decided to destroy Earth because the Atlanteans, so the Pedaeans and the creator, because two separate entities, but they both are entities, decided to destroy Earth because the Atlanteans were going, it happened 4 times that humanity built up and then they went the wrong way. And then let's call it the creator and the gods decided to destroy Earth, so you start again. Because the Atlanteans, they started gluten. The first wheat and barley production, you can go back, I discuss it in my House Free Code book, comes back 11,000 years before Christ. They trace it back on Earth. The Atlanteans started to genetically modify things, and that's what we're now doing as well. And they were highly scientifically advanced, and they went completely the wrong way. And they were starting to use crystals and whatever. So what happened is asteroids were sent to Earth that then hit Earth approximately 11,000 before Christ, and the Earth spun on its axis. So it literally, within, I don't know if it's minutes or seconds, turned. And it was complete mayhem. You can just imagine what would have happened to oceans and stuff like that. And that's why they found subtropical animals in Siberia underneath the snow. Now, why is it there? And the reason it's there, because it used to be in a different location. So if you take, like, America used to be further south, it spun on its axis. Now, what happened to the moon? The moon was a fragment from another, because there was a huge collisions, and that's where I understand the moon comes from. It's not, it was propelled into Earth. It's not, it hasn't been there for billions of years. So when you discuss
in
that,
no way suggests that it's possibly a satellite put there by aliens or anything like that, right? You think it's something natural?
yes, but well, my recollection, I didn't study the moon, where it comes from. I'll have to go, I don't even know if I knew you were going to discuss it today, I would have looked what I've said in my book. But then behind my book, I've got all the research notes. No doubt there would have been said something about the moon. So whether I've got it in my book, The Universe Code, or in my research note, there was stuff about the moon. I didn't discuss it in a lot of detail in my book, but there might be some stuff in it. It's not. So if you say it was placed there by aliens, you can in a roundabout say yes, but not physically that they produced the Earth.
Well, I don't know if it was or not. I mean, I know that's a theory. I don't know. The thing about it too is a lot of people say that it's responsible for life on Earth too, right? The tides and stuff like that.
Well, just on the point on the aliens. So aliens are people like us. The Bedaeans are our million years ago. This whole idea of green people is put out there by the US government and other governments to put people off track, so that when you talk about UFOs, you're the crazy one. It's not crazy. The Pentagon have twice confirmed, they've shown photos of the UFOs, and anyone can just research Billy Meyer. It's all there. So in a sense, it's true. The aliens are not aliens. They're the Bedaeans. And the Bedaeans' grandparents are the Akunians. There's many entities, but the Bedaeans are the ones that come to Earth. They're the gods of the Old Testament. And they are partly responsible for creating this catastrophe, for this asteroid attack, 11,000 years before Christ. So in a sense, they placed the moon there, but they didn't place it by technology. They placed it by asteroid, and the creator had Earth, Terra. The Earth is an entity. The magnetic field around it, if you look at our bodies, we've got chakras and human energy fields. That's part of my book. The Earth is an entity. We cannot see it like that, but the Earth is an entity in its own right, just like the Creator is.
Absolutely.
The Creator is. So the moon was placed there in a roundabout way by aliens, but they're not aliens.
That's fascinating. Now, what is the point of NASA going back in 2024? Is it just to get things right and to finally get there? Or, what are your thoughts?
Well, I heard that I think it's helium-3 is known to be on the moon, and that they reckon that could be a very good fuel source. So it takes a lot of fuel to get out of our atmosphere. And then once we out of our atmosphere, then you need less fuel. So if you can then go to the moon and then fuel up again with helium-3, that's what I've heard. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons NASA is now pushed to go back to the moon, and this is purely speculation, is because China is going. So China is now doing its own thing. So now imagine NASA, just imagine the scenario that they've been telling a lie all these years, and now China's going back. Can you think of something that now you can see why Trump is not keen on China? Now, I'm also not keen on China because of what they're doing.
I mean, that brings up some thoughts. I mean, if China does land, it could potentially expose some things, right?
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying go for it, China. Get to the moon. Let's because China is going to then show if the footage of the Chinese landing has got sunlight behind it, or if the shadows are parallel or the same length, then we know NASA completely faked it. So and they'll no doubt the other things as well that they'll find that they can show that the NASA footage, because the NASA footage of 50 years ago is like, compared to now, is like archaic. They couldn't, in a studio, they couldn't produce fantastic stuff, and the Chinese are persecuting the. I've got a talk on that, on that, one of my 10 talks on. They're persecuting the mostly the Buddhists, then the Christians, and only then the Rohingya Muslims. But because if you need to be in the Chinese government, you need to be atheist. And that's fine if you want to be atheist, but don't take it out on people that believe it. Now, so China needs to move, because yin and yang. Unless China starts moving, we cannot have true world peace. But when it comes to China and going to the moon, I'm going, yes, because they are single-handedly, I think, my gut feel, what makes sense to me. You know, all of this, what we're discussing today, is what makes sense. My whole universe code is about, I discovered these things. Okay, I had a lot of help from the spirit world and entities, Angel Margaret, Angel Creon entities, and it's all what makes sense. You know, so yeah.
Fascinating stuff. I wish we had more time to talk. I'm gonna have to bring you back on. Where can the listeners? I know you had mentioned it earlier, but where can the listeners find your work and get a hold of the things you're doing?
So my main website is lightsurfers.me, lightsurfers.me, and then at the bottom of that, and then I've got my 10 talks. You can find everything there. And then at the bottom, I've got links to my other 3 sites, which is Let's Live Longer Now, which is my House Screen Code book, which is One Souls, which is my Universe Code book, and then International Celebration of Dyslexia, which is my dyslexia book.
Excellent, excellent. And thanks again for taking the time to be on the show. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, I want to have you back on. I think there's plenty of topics we can discuss and maybe dive a little deeper on some things.
Absolutely. The Jesus in India, reincarnation, and some other stuff, human energy field, chakras, fascinating.